Hi everyone, it's Andy LaCivita, founder of Mile Walk and the Mile Walk Academy and award-winning author of The Hiring Prophecies, here with a 3-part video series titled 3 Keys to Ace Any Job Interview. We're on video number 3. Today it's going to be about how to interview the employer and how to ask your questions. But before we get into that, I want to mention parts 1 and 2. If you haven't seen those yet, part 1 was about why you actually succeed in an interview or why you actually get the job. It has much, much more to do with your communication and your exchange of information with the job interviewer than it does about your qualifications. So regardless of how perfect you are for the job, or the job is perfect for you, or what your experience looks like, there are 3 reasons you ultimately get the job. Your ability to accurately articulate your fit and value, the other person's ability to accurately decode what you said. Just because you said it perfectly doesn't mean they got it perfectly, and the interviewer's memory, because these hiring decisions don't happen in real time. So it's all about the communication. And in that communication, we talked about the biases and the communication gaps and other troublesome issues that occur for you, so that in the second video, we talked about how to tell great stories so that you can overcome those issues and that you can tell your stories in a manner that make you likable and believable and memorable. So we talked about the 5 common qualities that make stories believable and memorable: keeping it short and simple, making them believe you, capturing and keeping their attention, talking in their lingo, making them believe you, and getting them to care and ultimately to act on your behalf. So those 5 characteristics. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. That's sending your message to the employer. And in that video, below that video, there is a great ebook that I offer. It's called Ace Your Job Interview. It's Master the 14 most effective job interview questions. So you'll get an idea of what the employer is likely going to ask you so that you can frame or at least think about the stories you want to tell. And in that ebook, I not only included the 14 best interview questions, but I included 43 variations of those questions, what the employer is looking for, why they're asking it, what they're looking for, and how exactly to respond. So it's a great supplement to how to tell those great stories. Today we're going to talk about asking your questions. And before we dive into asking your questions, I want to give you a minute on me. I am the founder of Mile Walk and the Mile Walk Academy, but Mile Walk is an executive search firm. Mile Walk Academy is my training site. And over the last dozen or so years, I have helped more than 500 people secure jobs. And 5 years ago, I wrote this book called Interview Intervention Communication That Gets You Hired. It has been purchased or downloaded by nearly 100,000 people. We're closing in on 100,000 people that have taken to this book to help them with their careers. Never in my wildest dreams would I have anticipated that I would be able to help that many people, but I'm so glad that people are enjoying it. There's a ton more information in that book. So although I'm going to go through these lessons very quickly, you can certainly supplement it with that book or some of the free ebooks that I offer. Now, I want to talk about the questions. And before we talk about how to ask the questions and organize all this other good stuff, I want you to think about what's actually happening. You are likely, not 100%, but likely in the 4th quarter of the interview. Most interviewers these days, they start with a little something about the organization or a little something about their background or the unit or whatever. Then they ask you some questions, and then they turn control of the interview over to you with, do you have any questions for me? Or would you like to ask me some questions, or whatever they might say. The moment that they say that, they are literally turning complete control of what you're going to say over to you. You get to say anything you want. You get to ask anything you want. You can be ready. And there's 2 goals that I think you have at this point with each question that you ask. The first one is you should sell yourself. Yes, sell yourself. Every syllable that comes out of your mouth, you should be trying to sell yourself to the employer. And the second thing is you should be gathering information or intelligence so that you can make a good decision about whether you want to work there, or a good career decision for yourself. So you got those 2 goals with every question. Now, I think there are 3 ways that you can think about this to accomplish those 2 goals. The first one is the way in which you organize your questions. The second is the way in which you structure each question, exactly what you're going to say and how you're going to ask it. And the third thing is, once you get some information from your question, when are you going to use it? And we're going to talk about each of those. So I'm going to run through those very quickly now. So you think about the organization to your questions. I would hope that you are spending a great deal of time listing out all the questions that you want to ask the employer, and those questions should be driven from your requirements and the things that you need to understand to make a good decision. So if you have gone through, and those of you that follow me and know I talk a lot about this self-awareness and self-discovery, but there are some great exercises that you can go through to make sure that you are gathering all of that insight so that your questions that you're developing are really spawned from what you need to know, not what the employer wants to tell you. So that's the first thing. That's a whole nother lesson. But once you do that and you start generating these questions, I recommend that you group them into 4 categories. The first category is company-related questions. And I would group the company-related questions together, and I would ask those first. The reason I would ask those first is because you're constantly sending messages to the employer about how you think, who you are, and asking company-related questions first does 2 things. Number 1, it sends a message to the employer, I'm a team player. I care about joining a Super Bowl team more than which position I'm playing. I would rather be a utility player on a Super Bowl team than I would rather be the ace pitcher on a baseball team that goes 50 and 112. So it really sends a great message, and I think you join a company, you don't join a job, and if you join the right company, you don't have the job you joined for very long, and I mean that in a great way, because great companies know how to develop their people, and they will elevate you and give you more and more responsibility. So I would be far more concerned about the company's stability and strategic questions related to the organization, and I would ask those first. That's everything related to the organization, the direction of the company, what products and services are they going to be focusing on and expanding with, how are they geographically dispersed. Anything that is top level or corporate level related, those are company related questions. The second bucket would be role related questions or job related questions. Anything that is very, very specific to your role, responsibilities, career growth, other things that are associated with the job itself. And then the third bucket would be either boss-related questions or interviewer-related questions. If you're speaking with your immediate boss, wouldn't you want to know things like what his or her management style is, what his or her expectations are, what the staff thinks of them, what the staff would consider their greatest opportunity for improvement, whatever you want to ask related to your boss. There's boss-related questions, and then if you're not speaking with your immediate boss, but you're speaking with some other person that is key in the organization, maybe it's a peer, a colleague, a subordinate, who knows, but I would want to understand some things that are of interest to that person. What drew them to the organization? What do they like about the organization? What surprised them when they joined the organization? What has kept them here so long? Whatever it might be. But so just from an organization perspective, company, role, boss, and interviewer. And I would ask the questions in that sequence to send those positive subliminal messages to the job interviewer. So that's the first thing, organization. The second thing is structure. Structuring your question, specifically how you're going to ask your question, is probably one of the areas where people make the greatest mistakes. Remember, when you ask a specific question, whatever that question is and whichever bucket it falls in, whichever of the 3 or 4 different groupings that you have, you want to make sure that you are selling yourself and you're getting the interviewer talking down the path you need him or her to be talking so that you can get the information that you need to make a good decision, not necessarily having them meander all over the place, giving you a lot of information that isn't very germane to you making a good decision. Now, what I see a lot of people do is they ask very close-ended questions where the interviewer is coming back with a yes or no or a 1 or 2 response, and you're not getting them talking, and there's an abrupt ending to the response. It's a quick and short response. You're on to the next question, and the flow of the interview is disrupted, so there's not a good cadence to the way people are talking to each other, and you're also not getting what you need. Then I've also seen the opposite is true, where the questions are way, way too open-ended, and you get the interviewer talking down a path that he or she doesn't necessarily need to go and isn't benefiting you by giving you the information that you need. So what I've done is, and I suggest this, and I don't suggest this for every single question that you ask, but I would sprinkle these throughout your questions, maybe every 3rd or 4th question, because otherwise it'll get exhausting. Remember, we want to make sure you sell yourself, and we want to make sure you get what it is that you need. And a great way to do that is by showing the interviewer that you've done your homework, you've made a good observation, you're going to ask a good question, and you're going to explain to the person exactly why you want to know that, so that he or she doesn't misinterpret, misconstrue, or make an assumption that isn't correct about why that's important to you. I'm not going to go into too many examples here just for sake of time, but I want to give you this little structure that I think will really help you get them talking down the right path and also sell yourself. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to show that I've done some research. I like to show them that I'm making a good, astute observation. I ask the question and I tell them exactly why. So for example, if I was an executive interviewing for a leadership position to run a healthcare unit of an organization that produces widgets across, that services many different sectors, manufacturing, healthcare, chemicals, and energy, and financial services, and so on, but I'm interviewing for the position, I could ask, could you explain to me what the current revenue levels are of each of the different sectors and what you anticipate them to be the following year? That's one way. There's a lot of ways to misinterpret why I would care about that, why I would want to know that. Where I could do a better job selling myself, and I could also get the interviewer talking right down the path that I want her or him to be talking. So I could say something like, I was reviewing your, and then insert whatever it was you were reviewing, website, an annual report, a video interview I saw. I noticed that, what your observation is, and I noticed that there was a great imbalance between the level of revenue across the 4 or 5 sectors that you service. I'd like to know what the current levels are today and what you are shooting for or anticipating those current levels to be by the end of next year. And the reason that I want to know that is I want to make sure that the company I'm joining is financially stable in the event there's a downturn in one of those sectors that are major, where a lot of our revenue is coming from. So now the interviewer is thinking, oh, wow, he or she did her homework, they're asking a good question, and I understand that the reason that they're asking it is because they're investigating the financial stability as opposed to maybe something else. Maybe the healthcare unit was the lowest revenue generating unit across the organization. And the interviewer might have been thinking, oh, the person is a bit concerned that we're not investing time, energy, resources, and so on to keep that industry up. So it's just a great way to shape the question to sell yourself and also make sure that the interviewer is talking down the path that you want him or her to be talking. The third aspect of question asking, so you got organizational structure, you got how to structure the specific question, and then the third thing is, when am I going to use the information that they're going to give me? People don't give a lot of thought to this, but you can use the information now or you can use the information later. And I'll be really specific because this will also help you sequence your questions so that you can sequence the questions where you're going to use the information right away to sell yourself in the interview. You put those first. And the ones that you want to contemplate for later, you can use those, you can put those toward the bottom so that you think about them. You get them last and you think about them later. So I'll be really specific. A short term or a now type of question I might ask during an interview is, can you tell me what the greatest attributes are about your best performing employees? Now, if the interviewer is going to respond to that question, they're going to provide you the traits and the characteristics of their greatest employees. Throughout your interview, you now can turn around and make sure that your stories or the questions that you're asking are highlighting how you match those characteristics. That's now short term. You gave me the information and I can use it to sell myself and respond back to you. Versus a longer term or more thoughtful a question that you need to contemplate, things like, what kind of training do you offer? What are your healthcare benefits? Things like that. Things that are important, but you're going to go off and you're going to think about as you decide whether or not you want to work there, whether or not those are appropriate for you. So I think that give some thought to, are these the types of questions where the job interviewer is going to give me information and I'm going to use it right away during the interview, or it might not even be during that interview, but it might be during the next interview. Or maybe you're interviewing with a bunch of people in the same day, or maybe you're going to be talking to somebody in the next week. So now you can use that information throughout the interview process. That's what I mean by now. So now doesn't necessarily mean this minute. It could mean this minute, or it could mean tomorrow or next week. But it's really while you are going through that interview process. So let's just recap this really quick. You want to make sure you're selling yourself and you're getting the information you need. Great way to do that is organizing your questions into 4 buckets: company-related questions, role-related questions, boss-related questions, or interview-related questions. How you structure your question, make sure you're showing them that you did your research, you made an observation, you asked the question, and you tell them exactly why. So I was reviewing I noticed that, here's my question, and here the reason I want to know is. So that's how you'd ask your question, or at least several of them throughout your battery of questions. And then the third thing is, when will you use the information? Will you use it now, or will you use it later? So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please share it. There's a plug-in at the bottom. Let me know if you've got any comments or questions. I'd love to engage with you and hear what you're thinking. And if you got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. There's also a register button or you can register for a webinar. I've got a webinar along these topics and others. A lot of the other interview intervention concepts are in that webinar. I hope you can attend one of those. I've sprinkled out different dates and different times. I hope you can attend one of those because I'm giving away some great gifts. But you have to attend the webinar to get those. So I hope you can make that, and I want you to be on the lookout for deeper training related to interview intervention and a lot of other career-related aspects like resume writing and job search strategies and a bunch of other things. I've even got a do-it-yourself program coming out here soon. But until then, I hope you follow me on the channels. You catch me on the Tips for Work and Life blog and podcast and YouTube channel. I'm out there. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Until next time, be great. Have a good one.